on behalf of Governor Cuomo, I want to welcome everybody to the New York State Veterans and Military Family Summit. And with that quick opening, I'm going to ask you to stand again, and Colonel Eric Hesse, our state leader of our veterans, is going to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Again, on behalf of Governor Cuomo, I want to extend our welcome to everybody here. This is the first Veterans and Military Family Summit, and it is quite a gathering here of stakeholders across the state. I want, on behalf of the Governor, first thank everybody for coming. Special thanks to all our veterans and our active duty personnel who are here, and thanking them for all they've done serving this state and serving our country. What goes on in this complex would not happen without the sacrifices that have been made before, so I want to thank you all. I have some acknowledgments I'd like to make, if I could. First of all, we have Senate Majority Leader, Conference Leader Dean Skelos, who is here. I want to welcome him. Our Speaker of the Assembly, Speaker Sheldon Silver. Senator Joseph Addabbo Jr. Senator Greg Ball. Assemblymember Felix Ortiz. Assemblymember Michael Benedetto. We are very pleased to welcome Assistant Secretary for Public and Intergovernmental Affairs at the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs, Dr. Tommy Sowers. Dr. Sowers, thank you. And also to honor our own General Patrick Murphy, who is here. Welcome him. And our Director of New York State Division of Veterans Affairs, who just gave us the pledge, Eric Hesse. So welcome him. Before we get to our speakers, I'd like to first introduce a short video.
Service and sacrifice was something we lived with, when we got up and went out on patrol in an area where literally anybody could want to kill you or hurt you, in a city of millions of people in Baghdad.
I don't think of it as a sacrifice. I think of it as a contribution. It's what I do every day helps another soldier.
I think patriotism, first of all, love for your country. We talk a lot about sacrificing and how even though we love the kids, we try to tell them that some of the things that we do are above us or beyond us.
They're very proud that their father's a soldier and that he makes the sacrifices to be an American soldier, especially my son. He has a very close relationship with his father, so he doesn't hesitate to tell anyone that his father is a soldier in the National Guard.
It is a call to action, but it is a call to action that we gladly take.
I came home in 2008, and I kind of felt like in some regards I was just dropped off at an airport like a stowaway.
So they tell you everything you need to know about going over, but nobody tells you how to come back.
And unfortunately, there are some times where some individuals have had a difficult road.
It can be hard for a lot of soldiers to find jobs, especially when they come back.
We can't leave people behind. We can't let people fall through the cracks.
A lot of our friends friends have issues, especially ones who were in Iraq. Stories about how firecrackers at July 4th scared them and they would jump in the bushes, or loud noises startled them much more than they did prior to when they deployed.
Not only do you come home to your families, but now you come back to your communities and often your jobs if you can. And there's not a lot of transition time. You can literally leave a war zone and 10 days later be back in your own neighborhood.
There was a disconnect of what was really needed for those soldiers coming back.
So I always say, if you got your health care, you got the basic tool to cope.
The toughest thing would be, obviously, you miss your family and you miss some of the things that you're used to for your way of life.
There is that hardship for the families and also for the soldiers when they're away. You know, they're worried about their family that's back home and who's taking care of them and helping them out.
It was very hard. I was a single mom to a 3-year-old little boy, so leaving him was very, very difficult.
And I didn't want her to leave at all.
It's so sad that so many soldiers are returning and they're not realizing that there's housing opportunities, education opportunities, mental health, physical health, also opportunities that exist on their behalf.
It's nice that people have looked at what it's really like for a soldier to come back, what the real needs are, and I think they're starting to get addressed.
Now, I'm a disabled veteran myself from the Vietnam era, and there was nothing for us when we returned. So this is a sense of accomplishment that we're finally offering to the returning veterans, at least some type of assistance in getting their lives together. So it means a lot to me.
One of the Army values is selfless service. You do it for someone else, anyone else. Total strangers, you do it for them.
It's a privilege to serve a country that has given me so much, has given my family so much. The sacrifice goes both ways.
We as humans should give more of ourselves to our community. I think we ultimately want to help our fellow New Yorkers.
Now, service and sacrifice to me means reaching out to them now, because we wouldn't let anybody fall through the cracks and leave anyone behind over there. Now, we have to still carry that mission and that concept forward.
Leadership plays a critical role in our U.S. military. It also plays a critical role in our government here. And I've had the pleasure of working with a great leader over the last 3+ years, a man who has led state government with honor and distinction, a man who has really helped change his state and transform things. And more importantly, what you don't see publicly is what he does behind the scenes. And today is an example of how much he cares about the men and women who serve this country, both past and present, by hosting this summit today. So please welcome the great governor of the great state of New York, Governor Andrew Cuomo.
Thank you. Thank you. Thank you very much. And for some of you, welcome to Albany for the first time. I know we have guests from Washington, D.C. and all across the country. So welcome to the state capitol. It's a pleasure to have you here. We're very excited. This is the first ever Veteran Summit that the state has held. And I hope it's going to be the first of many. And it's truly my pleasure to be part of it. I want to begin by thanking the organizers for today. This was a novel concept. It was a long time in coming. It took a lot of work to organize and set up, and I'd like to recognize and thank Colonel Hesse for his good work, Rob Diamond for his good work. Let's give them a round of applause. I'd also like to thank Secretary Sowers coming up from Washington, D.C. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. Thank you for being here. And all the guests from around the country and the state officials who are here, thank you for your time and your participation. Today, I believe, is the start of something. It is not the end of something. It's the beginning of a relationship. It's the beginning of a group that sets an agenda and a discussion that will continue. And it is one that is very important to us because it's a relationship that we cherish. I think it's important that we as a government and as a people respect the price that we pay for freedom, because the cost is often all too dear. New York has a long history in the battle for freedom. It started with the Battle of Saratoga, not far from the point that we're at today, which was the turning point in the Revolutionary War. World War I, 500,000 New Yorkers participated. Largest contingent from any state was the state of New York in World War I. World War II, 800,000. Today, the 10th Mountain Division is in Afghanistan. 450 National Guard are in Kuwait. We have just under 1 million veterans in the state of New York. In New York, our goal is not just to remember and honor veterans one day a year, but truly every day. To honor them not only in our words, but more importantly in our actions. And that's what this summit is all about. The goals of the summit are threefold. First, a new appreciation and approach for military families. The focus has been on the individuals that deploy, as it should be. But in actuality, it is a family that is in service. It is a spouse or a significant other that does double duty at home. It's a daughter without a parent. It's a son without a parent at Little League games. It's a sacrifice by the family, and it is a burden borne by the family. And we should address and respect that burden. Second, service takes a toll. Lost time, lost opportunity, but often a mental burden to carry, PTSD, often a physical legacy, and a difficult transition afterwards. Piecemeal, fragmented, patchwork programs are frustrating to deal with, ineffective, and costly. This state should develop a comprehensive approach, education programs, employment programs, housing programs, counseling for the individual and the family, all integrated into one comprehensive, holistic approach. And third, for those who paid the highest price and gave their lives, like the tens of thousands of brave New Yorkers who gave their lives over the years, they will be forever in our prayers, and they have our support for their survivors. For those who will bear the scars that will remind them every day of their service, they must not be forgotten, just as they cannot forget. For those 106,000 disabled veterans in New York, we must take extraordinary action, and the state will. The federal government has set a goal of 3% of the federal contracts to go to businesses run by disabled veterans. The federal government has also established a set-aside of agency contracts to make that goal a reality. And goals are nice, but reality is better, and meeting the goal is the optimum. While about a dozen states have set goals for disabled veterans, no state has established a set-aside program as the federal government has, and I applaud the federal government's goal and set-aside. The optimum approach is an ambitious goal and an aggressive set-aside program to meet that goal. In New York, ambitious and aggressive are words that define our pursuit of fairness and justice. I'm proud to announce today that New York State will establish a goal of 6% of its state contracts to go to disabled veterans, a goal as high as any goal in the country, and establish the first state set-aside program to meet that goal, which will be binding on every agency and every authority in the state of New York. I hope this sets a bar and sets a standard for other states to follow. To the extent New York creates a race to the top, then so be it, and brings attention to this issue. And I think it's fitting that this state that has paid such a high price over the years makes the greatest commitment. And I'm proud to be the governor at a time when the state actually does it. I also want to applaud my colleagues in the legislature. I would like to be able to say that it was difficult to get this done, and I would like to be able to say that I had to work extraordinarily hard to convince my colleagues. But that's not true. As a matter of fact, the opposite is true. Because in this world where everything is so complicated, sometimes it's still simple. And the concept of right and wrong is still simple. And sometimes there's a right thing to do and there's a wrong thing to do, and it's clear. This policy is a major policy. It's a major program. It's big numbers, it's big impact. It's probably one of the simplest and shortest conversations I had with the legislative leadership in the 3 years that I've been governor. Because as bold as it is as simple as it is. We should do the right thing by the disabled veterans who serve this country, and this state will. I applaud the Senate and I applaud the Assembly for agreeing on a bill that will be introduced today, that will be voted on in just a few days, but we're sure will pass, and I want to applaud them for their leadership once again in setting a standard of justice. I want to applaud Assemblyman Felix Ortiz and Assemblyman Michael Benedetto, who have done great work on this. I want to applaud Senator Greg Ball and Senator Joseph Adabo, who have been great leaders on this, and the legislative leaders themselves. Senator Dean Skelos, who's the majority leader of the Senate, and Speaker Sheldon Silver, who's the leader of the Assembly, for their leadership and their action in making this great step a reality today. Let's give them a round of applause. I'll go to you. And with that, I will turn it over to Senate Majority Leader Dean Skelos.
Thank you very much, Governor, and Lieutenant Governor Duffy and Speaker Silver. It's a pleasure for me to join with you today, and I want to thank Governor Cuomo for really holding this really important event, and thank all of you that are here, servicemen and women, and in particular, I want to salute, if there are any here, our Gold Star mothers who hopefully have joined us. Your sacrifice, your bravery, and your commitment to freedom is an inspiration to all of us. Just a few days ago, we had Fort Drum Day in the Senate under the leadership of Senator Ritchie to honor the men and women of the historic 10th Mountain Division for their service all over the world and for their many contributions to the North Country and to the state of New York. We are here today to discuss how the state can give back to you. What can we do to support your families when you're away and doing duty for our country? What can we do to help you succeed when you leave the military service and re-enter the workforce? I'm very pleased that we have an agreement on the set-aside for government contracts for service-disabled veterans who own small businesses. In the Senate, Veterans Committee Chairman Greg Ball has been a leader on this issue, and Greg, we thank you. He has worked very closely with veterans organizations and the governor's office on this issue. Allowing these courageous men and women to fully participate in state contracting will open up tremendous new economic opportunities for service-disabled veterans. This will build on the Hire a Vet tax credit that was proposed by the Senate and enacted into law last year to encourage businesses to hire military veterans. We owe our veterans an enormous debt for their service and sacrifice. They and their families deserve our admiration, our respect, and our full support. I look forward to today's discussion on what we can do to help those who put their lives on the line for us. And Governor, I thank you for bringing us all together again today. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Senator. It's now my pleasure to introduce the Speaker of the New York State Assembly, Speaker Sheldon Silver.
Good morning. My thanks to Governor Cuomo for convening this summit and for providing the leadership to get this legislation to the point of enactment as quickly as we anticipate it will. To our veterans and to our military families, I bring you the warm greetings of the New York State Assembly and the best wishes of the chairman of our Committee on Veterans Affairs, Assemblyman Michael Benedetto, who is here, and his sponsor of the particular legislation that the governor just announced, Assemblyman Felix Ortiz, who was likewise here with us on my left today. A number of our Assembly colleagues are veterans or are members of military families, so I want you to be assured that your voice is ever present in the people's house of our state legislature. Few of us can comprehend combat or the breadth of the challenges veterans are facing. As Speaker and as an Assemblyman, I am aware that many combat veterans are having an extremely difficult time finding employment, locating a place to live, obtaining the necessary health care, and rebuilding their lives. The sheer number of combat veterans who are committing suicide, who are suffering with traumatic brain injuries, PTSD and MST, who are homeless and living in poverty, is shameful and should unsettle every American citizen. Truly, my heart goes out to each and every military family who is struggling to get back the sons, daughters, parents, spouses, siblings, and friends they love and are fighting not to lose. I and my Assembly colleagues on both sides of the aisle want to help you. We are ready and have always been ready to work with the governor, with our counterparts in the Senate, with our congressional delegation and the administration in Washington to help you in any way that we can. We are unanimous in our agreement that caring for our veterans is not a partisan issue, but is so clearly our moral and national obligation. Over the years, we've taken actions, both in our capacity as individual lawmakers and as members of a legislative body, to help veterans make the transition to civilian life, including enactment of the Veterans Employment Act and our agreement to provide veteran-owned businesses with increased opportunity in state contracting. We're here today because we want to do more. We want to work with you to make sure New York is a better, more compassionate, and nurturing place for veterans and for military families. If I might, let me make one more observation. Among the many memories of September 11th, 2001 that I will always have is the rising up of a generation of courageous young people who enlisted to fight terrorism and to make sure this never happens to America again. Thousands were lost. Many more returned profoundly injured. These young men and women stood up for America in our darkest hour. Now, we must stand up for them. A big part of our challenge is outreach to veterans who are unable or unwilling to seek help, and to a public that needs to understand that this is more than just a federal government responsibility. Hopefully, with this summit, we take New York a step in the right direction. To those of you who served and to the families whose hearts and minds went with them, I thank you, the Assembly thanks you, and we thank the Governor for providing the leadership to focus on the issues of importance to those families. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you. Very nicely said, Mr. Speaker. We'll now sign a bill that is going to be introduced today in the New York State Legislature in both houses, which will represent the passage of the act that I just described for the service-disabled veterans. Well done. Congratulations, gentlemen. You want to stand up and take a picture? Come on, Michael. Come on, Colonel.
Congratulations to all on a great piece of work.
Okay, folks, again, we're going to get back to the program. First of all, just want to say the governor, Speaker Silver and Senator Skelos are stepping away. They are finalizing the budget negotiations. We are going to host this group at the governor's home at the end of the day. There's a mansion event at the end of the day, but they're stepping away now. They're in the midst of the last-minute negotiations for the budget. So we're going to continue this program today. What I'd like to do, if we could, we made some acknowledgments before, but to start, and we'll go around to my right here, around the table, introductions here, and then we'll start the program. Joe?
Hi, I'm General Pat Murphy. I'm the commander of the New York National Guard and the commissioner of the Division of Military and Naval Affairs.
Senator Greg Ball.
Senator Joe Adabo.
Tony Odierno, J.P. Morgan Chase, Military and Veterans Affairs.
Peter Rivera, the Commissioner of the Department of Labor.
Sandra Foley, Supportive Service and Veteran Families, VA.
Gary Shaheen, Syracuse University Institute for Veterans and Military Families.
George Liacata, Senior Vice President with the State of New York Mortgage Agency.
Sue Malley, I'm the Director of the New York VA Regional Office.
Sam Hall, I'm wearing two hats today, President of the New York State Association of County Veteran Service Officers Incorporated and the New York State Council of Vietnam Veterans of America.
Courtney Burke, Deputy Secretary for Health.
Roanne DeStito, Commissioner of the Office of General Services.
John Javis, Mental Health Association of Nassau County and Veterans Health Alliance of Long Island.
Mary Ellen Jakowski, I'm the President of the Department of New York of Gold Star Mothers.
Sherry Boone, Commissioner, Department of Civil Service.
Bill Kelly, Interim Chancellor, City University of New York.
Nancy Zemford, Chancellor of the State University of New York.
Command Sergeant Major Byers, and I'm the Sergeant Major for West Point.
Good morning, Lori Guler. I am the Transition Services Manager for the Army Career and Alumni Program at Fort Drum.
Vince McGowan, President, United War Veterans Council.
Gil Quinones, New York Power Authority. I'm here on behalf of all the electric and gas utilities of New York State, as well as the independent power producers of New York.
Michael Pascal, State Commander, Veterans of Foreign Wars, Department of New York.
Assemblyman Felix Ortiz, Chair of the Cities Committee.
Assemblyman Mike Benedetto, Chair of the Veterans Committee.
Eric Hesse, State Director of Veterans Affairs.
I'm Tommy Sowers. I'm the Assistant Secretary for Public and Intergovernmental Affairs at the Department of Veterans Affairs.
I'm Bob Duffy, Lieutenant Governor to Governor Cuomo, and to all our guests at the round table, I thank them, and also our guests in the audience, who include both current military leaders and service personnel. We have veterans, we have families, we have people that lead veterans organizations, a very distinguished group. We thank you for taking time to be here and be part of this. The governor's done an extraordinary job with summits, and this one today I want to just reinforce his commitment, as you heard, with the legislation. Out of these summits often come some great steps and great changes, and it's a way that we honor those who've served this country with distinction and make sure when they come out of service that we still take care of them. So I just thank you for taking the time to come today. We have a few comments to make, and we'll have some roundtable discussion. I'd like to have Colonel Hesse first be our first speaker. Colonel.
Thank you, sir. Good morning, and thank you for attending New York State's first Veterans and Military Families Summit. I want to thank Governor Cuomo for making this a priority. The response to this summit has been overwhelming. Our goal is to make New York the leader in opportunities for veterans, military members, and their families. We need to take advantage of the skills and leaderships they bring to New York. There is an expression that veterans make communities better, and I am a firm believer in that. With this summit today and continuing partnerships with all our veterans organizations and the incentives the governor has already implemented, like tax credits for hiring veterans and experience counts, we will attract the best and brightest to New York. We will make New York a greater workforce than it already is. 11 years ago today, we kicked off Operation Iraqi Freedom. Today, soldiers from the 10th Mountain Division serve in Afghanistan, and members of the Army National Guard are serving in Kuwait. We also have future leaders at schools like West Point, the Merchant Marine Academy, and in ROTC programs in all our universities. They are our future veterans. New York State is home to nearly 900,000 veterans. 72% served during periods of combat. Approximately 88,000 have served in Iraq or Afghanistan. Additionally, New York State is home to approximately 30,000 active duty military, as well as another 30,000 National Guard and Reserve. New York has the fourth largest number of veteran-owned small businesses in the country. As these statistics show, New York is home to a large veteran and military population. Our veteran population is also unique in that we have nearly as many living World War II veterans as we do who are post 9/11. But we will continue to see that post 9/11 number grow in the next few years. This year, in June, we'll celebrate the 70th anniversary of D-Day. At the 60th anniversary of the war in Korea last year, we had nearly 100,000 Korean War era veterans. And nearly 1 year ago, on Patriots' Day, we rededicated the Vietnam Veteran Commemorative Museum here in the Capitol for the more than 250,000 Vietnam era veterans. 29 March, we will also celebrate with them on Vietnam Veterans Day. To all our veterans, I say thank you and welcome home. Nearly 10% of all our veterans are female, and based on the national numbers, that will increase as well. We need to continue to improve the lives of all veterans, and today, working with industry, education, state and federal agencies, we are. I've heard the governor challenge us all in the past by saying we can do more. New York State decided it can do more for our veterans and military families, and we will. Thank you.
Thank you, Colonel. I'm now very pleased to introduce Major General Patrick Murphy, who's the Adjutant General of New York State, he served this country with distinction, but also has served the state with distinction through the many weather-related tragedies we've had over the last 3+ years. So, General Murphy.
Thank you, sir. Today's military is made up of over 2.2 million of some of America's finest men and women, all volunteers. Most have prepared for, served in, or supported combat operations over the last 13 years. A vast majority of those service members who have joined our ranks, at least over these last 13 years, did so knowing that they may be called on to serve our nation overseas in hostile areas, and understanding they are leaving their home and will have to make sacrifices in order to serve. Of these current serving military population, best estimates suggest that over 5% do or have called New York home. Many of these service members serving outside of New York will return someday to be near their family, find jobs, enjoy the beauty and benefits of living in New York. Currently in New York, we have a large military population, especially when considering all of our active duty, reserve, and National Guard forces. New York has a significant active duty presence. For example, Fort Drum is one of the Army's premier installations in the country, the home of the 10th Mountain Division. More than 18,000 soldiers, nearly 4,000 civilians supporting them, and 18,000 family members there as well. West Point, a crown jewel in the Army's inventory, with 6,000 cadets, military members, faculty, staff, and family members. The Army National Guard is the 8th largest Army Guard in the country, with a current strength of 10,500. 80% of those soldiers have joined our ranks since September 2001. The New York Air National Guard is the largest Air National Guard in the country. We have 6 air bases and installations and nearly 6,000 airmen assigned. The Army, Marine Corps, Navy, Air Force, Coast Guard, Reserve have installations and staffing across the state. Today, these same service members continue to answer the call of their nation in places like Afghanistan, Jordan, Kuwait, the Horn of Africa, and around the world. These men and women have served proudly, and we honor their service. However, we shouldn't forget, after 13 years of continuous conflict in the Middle East, 505 New Yorkers have made the ultimate sacrifice. These 505 combat casualties are the brave men and women who were either assigned to New York-based units or have New York as a home of record. With each military member comes a family, both immediate and extended, a mother, a father, brothers and sisters, a wife, children, an extended family, and all their supporters. It's often said that it's harder for the family that remains behind at home, making the sacrifices, that bears the brunt of the deployment. When a soldier enlists, their family enlists as well. Training and deployments take the service member away from their homes for extended periods of time. We miss the birthdays, the births, the weddings, the graduations, holidays, and all those responsibilities that we once shared. If the service member knows that his family will be safe, secure, and supported, they will stay focused on the job at hand. If they know their family will be taken care of, if something should happen to them, they will remain committed and alert, no matter where they find themselves. At some point, by virtue of membership and time served, these great Americans become veterans and a family of veterans. We have veterans both serving in uniform and those that have transitioned out of uniform. Today, the governor gives us the opportunity to present, to discuss and reflect on those statutes, regulations, policies, and programs that support our service members, the military families, and our veterans. Our challenge revolves, to varying degrees, around meaningful employment, education for school-age children in transition, adult education, and benefits associated with service to state and nation. We greatly appreciate the governor's continued support of our veterans, military families, and service members. Thank you.
Thank you, General. Thanks, General. Now please introduce from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. He is the Assistant Secretary for Public and Intergovernmental Affairs. He traveled from the nation's capital to be here today, Dr. Tommy Sowers. Dr.
Good morning, everyone. Lieutenant Governor Duffy, thank you for the introduction. And I really want to commend the legislators, the leadership, and Governor Cuomo for taking lead again on a key veterans issue. It's inspiring to see what occurred this morning, and really it's part of a long commitment by the governor from his time at HUD, continuing through today to lead on veterans issues. General Murphy, it's an honor to meet you. Thank you for your service. Eric Hesse, you've been a fantastic leader as well. And on behalf of Secretary Shinseki and President Obama, I want to thank you all for spearheading this terrific event. Rob Diamond, good friend of mine, is clearly a leader of this next greatest generation of veterans. The nation knows that you have done incredible work up here, and I've seen it in the statistics. And my time in the service, I learned as a Green Beret that you can't do it alone. And when I look around this table and I see state, local, for-profit, non-profit, county level, and especially the VA sitting here at this table, it's inspiring to see. Sue, thank you for coming up from New York. She runs our regional office. Linda runs our hospital, serves 39,000 veterans here. And the VA has a large impact inside of the state of New York. $5 billion of resources a year to 12 hospitals and unique programs like up in Canandaigua, the Veterans Crisis Line. I'd especially like to thank the veterans that are here today. And, you know, I learned a long time ago to understand the operational environment. Let me get a sense of who we have out here. How many veterans do we have here? Can you raise your hand? Let's give them all a round of applause. Thank you. Now, how many were enlisted veterans? Okay, that definitely helps. So I was a young officer. This reminds me of my first speech before the troops. I pulled my platoon sergeant aside and said, "Hey, Top, what do they want to hear?" And he said, "LT, nobody complained about a short speech." So I'll keep this brief. It was the first of many lessons I had in the military. We have to assess the situation is another lesson that I learned. And the situation after over a decade of war is that the veterans face large challenges, not just our generation, but all generations: healthcare, education, and jobs. And the VA is focused on meeting those challenges. No administration has been better for veterans than this administration. And you can see it by a Washington maxim. They say, "Show me your budget and I'll tell you what you value." And over the past 4 years, we've seen our budget grow by 50%. We are committed to providing this care. My generation has benefited immensely, and me personally, I've benefited immensely. I'm one of the 1.1 million post 9/11 veterans that has benefited from the GI Bill. My home loans through the VA. I'm service connected. I get my health care through the VA. The VA has made me stronger. But while we've made tremendous progress, we still have a long way to go. A tragedy is that 22 veterans take their life every day. During this gathering, that will likely occur somewhere in America. But the true tragedy is 17 have never sought VA health care because they do not know about it. They do not know about vet centers. They do not know about health care. They do not know that this incredible system is out there. And we know that because we asked them. 59% when polled know little to nothing about their benefits. And that is our challenge. That's why I want to applaud what Governor Cuomo and Lieutenant Governor Duffy for convening this gathering. And the speaker said it best. This is about outreach and making sure that veterans know and understand their benefits. 149 years ago, President Lincoln said a quote that stands out in front of the VA. It was during his second inaugural. He said, "With malice towards none, with charity for all, with firmness in the right as God gives us to see the right. Let us strive to finish the work we are in, to bind up the nation's wounds, and to care for those who shall have borne the battle, and for the widow, and for the orphan." That is our founding motto. These words gave purpose to the VA's mission. And for many years, the VA waited for veterans to come to us for that care. Today, we're trying to do that differently. Here with us today is a tool we'll use. Out in front, you'll see one of our mobile vet centers. It is the VA on wheels, 70 of these between March 4th of this year and March 4th of next year, the 150th anniversary of Lincoln saying those words. We will visit all 3,144 counties in America, every county in New York. We will be here with you to make sure that veterans know and understand the benefits that they've earned and they deserve. We're coming to you. And I want to thank Governor Cuomo for the leadership on this and many other issues with veterans. I want to thank you all for convening this, and I look forward to participating in this great event today. Thank you.
Thank you, Dr. Sowers. Our next speaker, and please welcome, he's the Vice President for Military and Veterans Affairs at J.P. Morgan Chase, Mr. Tony Odierno. Tony, welcome.
And first of all, as a service-disabled veteran myself, I want to thank you all for your work today on passing that legislature. That's very, very, very important. And also thank you for the invitation here today to talk about veteran employment. Veteran employment is something that is very important to J.P. Morgan Chase. Since we opened our Office of Military and Veterans Affairs 3 years ago, we've hired over 6,500 veterans at J.P. Morgan Chase, 650 of those in the state of New York. Also through the 100,000 Jobs mission, which is a coalition that we lead, collectively have hired over 117,000 veterans in the last 3 years. So we're very proud of that. But although progress has been made and veteran employment in the aggregate has improved, the unemployment for post 9/11 veterans is still consistently 2% higher than veteran employment overall. And within that, there's subdivisions. When you look at those that are veterans under 30 years of age, women veterans, disabled veterans, even military spouses. And I include military spouses because when you look at the overall success of a veteran, his family has a big part to do with that. And it's important that we work to find them jobs as well, as they are experiencing higher unemployment. Also, within the next 4 to 5 years, we expect to have over 1 million service members transitioning out of the military. Putting all this together, although a lot of progress has been made, there is still a lot to do. I'd like to just make four quick points on employment here today. The first is the importance of a closing, what I call the military-civilian knowledge gap. The majority of Americans have not served in the military. The majority really don't even know someone who has served in the military. As an employer, it's important to us to educate our recruiters, our hiring managers, our employers on the military. So when we're making hiring decisions, we're making sure we're hiring the best candidate. And if someone has military experience, we want to make sure our hiring managers understand that experience. We've created a course called Military 101 that our recruiters and hiring managers take that teach them the basics about the military. What are the different branches? What is the rank structure? What are the difference in responsibilities or in career paths between someone who's enlisted, someone who's an officer, someone who's a warrant officer? And bridging that gap also has to happen on the veteran side. When I was medically retired from the Army, I grew up in a military family. I didn't know anything else other than the Army. I had never done a resume before. I didn't know what I wanted to do. I didn't really even have a good idea of what was out there that I could do. Translating what I did in the military to what I wanted to do in the private sector. At JP Morgan Chase, we have a dedicated military recruiting team of 12 people. 10 of those are former military. Their sole job is to source candidates to our hiring managers, to make sure their resume is correct, to make sure they're applying for the right jobs based on their skills and what they want to do. The next thing I want to point out is the importance of developing an organizational connection. It's not just about recruiting and hiring veterans. It's about onboarding. It's about mentoring. It's about training. It's about retaining. The military does a great job of this. And as a private sector company, we want to make JP Morgan Chase a place where military and veterans want to work and where they can be successful. We've developed training programs when they come on board to help assimilate them to JP Morgan Chase private sector culture. We've also developed a mentoring program called Pathfinder that gives them support at every stage of their career at JP Morgan Chase and helps them move forward and have a meaningful career. Next thing I want to emphasize is the importance of collaboration and partnerships. We lead a coalition of 142 companies called the 100,000 Jobs Mission. As I mentioned, we've hired over 117,000, but it's not just about that. It's also about sharing what we're doing to improve the companies that are part of this organization, to make each other better, not only in hiring, but when veterans come to work at these companies. It's been very successful. I can't stress the importance of partnerships, and not just in the private sector, but across state, local, federal government, and the military services as well. Last thing I want to mention in terms of employment is education, and education being a key path to employment. When you get out of the military, you might not have the skill you need to do the certain job you want. So education is a way to do that, going back to get the skills you need. We fund a program at Syracuse University called the Veterans Career Transition Program. It's an online training program free to post 9/11 veterans. We underwrite it and allows them to get certificates in IT, HR, project management. Just one example of a training course available to get the skills you need. And one final thing, just reinforcing the importance of partnerships and collaboration, connecting with service members as they're coming out of the military, connecting them with the resources they need, incredibly important. So although we've come a long way, still a long way to go in employment for veterans. So thank you for having me here today.
Thank you, Tony. Great comments. Our next speaker will be Chancellor William Kelly from the City University of New York.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. It's a pleasure to be here today, privileged to be among so many veterans and currently serving military personnel, and an honor to speak about the critical importance of higher education for returning veterans. Let me begin with a familiar but still disarming data point. According to demographers, by the year 2025, 63% of all jobs in the United States will require a post-secondary credential. Many observers, myself among them, believe that ratio is low. We live in a knowledge economy, and education is the great divide. Those who have it will prosper. Those who do not will face a very difficult climb. I note this circumstance because the 2010 U.S. Census established that 26% of veterans had attained a bachelor's degree. The resultant educational gap is a serious problem for veterans, of course. Without degrees, their life options are foreshortened, but the problem is a critical one for the nation as well. Returning veterans are an extraordinarily valuable asset class our country can ill afford to undervalue. These men and women have been tested in crucibles their peers can barely imagine. They have held positions of responsibility and leadership rare in those so young. At the City University, we've been long attentive both to the remarkable capacity of veterans and to the university's obligation to serve them as well as they have served our country. From the days of the first GI Bill, 1944, City University has embraced returning veterans. They, in turn, have distinguished themselves as among our most accomplished alumni. The university remains an attractive option for returning servicemen and women. First, because of the quality and range of our programs. We currently offer 2,100 degree programs at 24 colleges. And second, because of the rich diversity of our student population. The recent drawdown of troops from Iraq and Afghanistan and the benefits extended by the post-9/11 GI Bill have led to a surge in CUNY's veteran population. In 2002, we enrolled 1,200 student veterans. By 2012, that number was 2,700, an increase of over 130%. This semester, 3,000 student veterans or military personnel are enrolled at CUNY colleges across the city's 5 boroughs. Almost 1/4 of that population are women. 3/4 of our student veterans are Black, Hispanic, or Asian, mirroring the overall demographic of the City University. Since 2010, CUNY has been selected as one of the most military-friendly public institutions by Military Times, with John Jay ranking second in the state of New York. The establishment of the Colin Powell Center for Policy Studies at City College and the recent appointment of General David Petraeus as a visiting professor at our Honors College have further increased our visibility among veterans groups. Given those numbers and the mission of the university to educate the children of the whole people, it should be no surprise that the university has targeted the needs of returning veterans. In academic 2012, we convened a Veterans Task Force with a mandate to customize the university's approach to veterans education. The resulting report, From Soldier to Scholar, established 38 goals for the university to meet in areas such as the following: accelerating veterans' access to financial aid benefits, offering expanded counseling and advisement, facilitating credit transfer for previous instruction and field experience, and initiating opportunities to engage the public and private sector to provide internships, networks, and career opportunities for student veterans after graduation. Pleased to say that we have made significant progress in each of these areas. Much more to be done, but we're pleased with the direction in which the university is moving. Let me just offer a few highlights of some of the work that we are currently doing and work that we continue and hope to expand as we go forward. We proactively altered our tuition policy last year to eliminate the 1 year non-resident tuition veterans relocating to New York were required to pay before they could establish residency. We now give those students 18 months of in-state tuition. We forego about $1.5 million in tuition to do so, but we strongly believe it's the right thing. Given that policy and our relatively low tuition, veterans who benefit from the GI Bill attend the City University for free. Our counseling and peer mentoring program, known as PROVE, the Project for Return and Opportunity for Veterans Education, funded by, among others, the Woodruff Foundation, Robin Hood, the American Council on Education, provides veterans with transition and adjustment to civilian and college life, and to improve their retention and graduation rates, establishes veterans at each of our colleges to assist fellow veterans in their progress through university life. In the past, when veterans left the military, they were often required to pay for and repeat courses that duplicated knowledges and skills they had already mastered. In alignment with federal regulation, CUNY now maintains an online repository of academic equivalencies of military credit so that veterans are given credit for that work and don't need to repeat it through CUNY Leads program called Linking Employment, Academics, and Disability Services. We assist veterans at every level, from continuing education to graduate degrees, counseling, resume preparation, interviewing skills, internship, job-seeking assistance. We do this both centrally and at the colleges. And in concert with our Directory of Veterans Affairs, we develop relationships, much as Tony was speaking about, with corporate partners to find placement for our veteran students. Are they sufficient, these programs, to our obligations and our purposes? No. Our veterans deserve more and better from the City University, from SUNY, from every university in the country, but we are moving aggressively in the right direction. We are pledged to extend those efforts. I want to conclude by noting that in the last 2 years, 4 of the valedictorians at our colleges were returning veterans. Enormously proud of them and their service and their performance at our colleges. And I want to conclude with a quick line from one of those students, Tony Wan, at York College's valedictory address. Mr. Wan said the achievements of finishing boot camp, surviving Iraq, graduating, or even earning the title of valedictorian are not the real achievement. The real achievement in the face of these challenges is finding our authentic selves. That is what we are committed to doing, and we call upon our colleagues in higher education to participate with us, and we look forward to working with them. Thank you, sir.
Well done.
Thank you, Chancellor. Our next speaker is Mr. John Javis, who is from the Mental Health Association of Nassau County.
With the mission to promote the health and well-being of Long Island veterans and their families through advocacy and a broad array of services. We're also one of the providers for the PFC Dwyer peer-to-peer project. In terms of my military background, in the late 80s and early 90s, I was part of a rather unique program, the Army's Chaplain Candidate Program, that brought seminary students onto active duty as officers to supplement the work of chaplains by providing counseling. I did this in Germany with the 1st Brigade, 3rd Armored Division. I was at Fort Dix, New Jersey when Saddam invaded Kuwait and provided support for soldiers being deployed. And I was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma when Desert Shield became Desert Storm and the air campaign began, and was providing support to a lot of family members there. In terms of veterans' mental health issues in New York State, I'll refer you to a study that was done by the RAND Corporation and the New York State Health Foundation a few years ago about Iraq and Afghanistan veterans. That study indicated that about 22% of those individuals had a probable diagnosis of post-traumatic stress disorder or depression. And of those that needed help, unfortunately, only 1/3 actually got help. I think the speaker mentioned before the need to do outreach. When they asked these veterans why they didn't get help, they cited the stigma of seeking help for a mental health concern, as well as not having a buddy or a peer help them navigate a confusing array of veteran benefits and services. And also damning for us as mental health providers, of those that got help, only half got minimally adequate help. As an example of that inadequate help, recently in Nassau County, we lost a nephew, an Iraq veteran, of one of our key alliance members. Unfortunately, he locked himself into a hotel room down in Tennessee, and he died of huffing, which is basically the inhaling of computer cleaner or dust off. He did this days after being discharged from a VA facility. It's important to note that when we deal with Iraq and Afghanistan veterans, that very often there are co-occurring issues. We've all heard about, roadside bombs and IEDs. Veterans exposed to that may have 5 issues stemming from that. They may have post-traumatic stress disorder from having lost their friend. They may have a traumatic brain injury from the force of the blast. They may have chronic pain or an injury from the explosion. They may be prescribed painkillers, and they also may be self-medicating with drugs or alcohol to relieve their emotional pain. Recently, earlier today, we did talk about the suicide rate, 22 a day, and on Long Island at the last quarter of 2012, we lost 9 guys in rapid succession, 9 Iraq and Afghanistan veterans who died either by suicide or due to accidental overdoses of drugs or alcohol. Some had served together, and some knew each other through treatment at the VA. We also know that incidences of military sexual trauma are skyrocketing, and while it's important to note high rates of female military sexual trauma, do not forget that there are also high rates of male military sexual trauma, and we've been dealing with some individuals that became homeless because of that, and also who unfortunately took their lives because of that trauma. And while we are paying a lot of attention today to the needs of younger veterans, in your book here, you'll see that most New York State veterans are actually older veterans, Korean War veterans, World War II veterans that are kind of facing end-of-life decisions. We have a great system of state veterans homes in New York State. We also know that many of our Vietnam veterans are hitting retirement age. And while they were able to kind of keep busy when they got back from Vietnam, raising children and building a career, now they're retiring or being forced to retire because they were laid off. And they'll call me up and say, I was fine, and now that I'm retired, I have too much time on my hands to think, and the PTSD comes back, and many are seeking help for the first time. The governor did mention today not to forget the importance of families, the mental health needs of mothers and spouses and children. They are also impacted. We've been doing a lot of work with family-to-family peer support, as well as Safe Talk, teaching families how to recognize the signs and symptoms of suicide. Later today, as we move the discussion toward mental health, I would hope that we move away from mental health being in a box of just pills and therapy. It's more than that. The governor spoke of being holistic, so I'd like to talk about, things like peer support as well as the social determinants of health, having stable housing, having a good job, having a good education. That's also part of good mental health, as well as a belief that recovery is possible. So thank you for allowing me to speak today.
Thank you, John. Your comments are a great segue into our next speaker, who will speak about military families. And please welcome Dr. Vivian Greentree. Thank you.
Hi, and I'm sorry for the contingent of us that are late, but in the military we say Semper Gumby, so thanks for. My name is Dr. Vivian Greentree. I'm a Navy veteran and a spouse, and the proud parent of hopefully 2 future Navy families, a Navy SEAL and a future Marine. They're 7 and 9, so they might change they might shift, maybe go Air Force. But I helped to co-found a group called Blue Star Families until last month when I recently left for the position at First Data. And what we were able to do at Blue Star Families is to create a national survey of military families, which we've been able to grow from a small amount of respondents to over 6,000 with this past year. We just closed the survey. And what that's been able to do is to provide insight and to the military community from families on the ground, the grassroots, from the active, the guard, the reserve components, officer enlisted, E1 to admiral. I use the Navy terms, because the elected officials are not just the ones making decisions that affect our military families and our service members and our veterans, but the military leadership, our civilian peers, resource providers, service providers, and this is a way to give them insight into the military community. We know so much more now than we did, well, definitely 10 years ago, but even more than we knew 2 years ago. We know more about the effects of deployment on families, communications, relationships, mental and behavioral health, financial impact, children, employment, and most recently transition. We know that families are concerned about their finances and their financial outlook. I think all of us here are aware of the discussion at the national level around pay and benefits and the commission that's been created to review those. We know that over 1 million service members will transition out over the next 5 years. And we know that we can make or break the next, we call it the next greatest generation. We can make or break them by how ready, willing, and able our local communities and states are to receive them back into the communities, that they came from. And even though we know so much more than we ever have, there's still so much that we don't. I believe it's called the unknown unknowns or the known unknowns. But there are lagging indicators that, especially in the area of mental and behavioral health, the effects of deployment on children and their educational attainment and the way that they form relationships and resiliency, and the effects of family overall resiliency. We do know that, throughout the research, there are two kind of big indicators that have been found over a variety of studies. One is that the single most robust indicator of how children experience deployment is through their caregiver, whether the at-home caregiver, whether that's a grandparent, a sibling, or a parent. And so it's so important to us that as we continue with the operational tempo that we have, that we support the families back at home, because we know that that's going to have such an impact on the children through the future. And that's also coincidentally what the service members are most concerned about, is what's happening back home. And then the second thing is that resiliency is very important in the programs that we've built up to support that, and the development of resiliency. It's very important, but it does have a limit. There's only so much we can ask of so many people. This is the most deployed force, and this is who have also been deployed for the longest durations of time. So it's up to us, the entirety of our nation, to ensure that we support them and their families at the level that's commensurate with the service that they have provided. And now, I said I had recently just left Blue Star Families, and I took the role of head of Veterans and Military Affairs at First Data. So again, in a different position, have the amazing pleasure to support the military community through the employment side, and in the private sector. And as I sat in our office yesterday, right across from the 9/11 memorial, and we're setting up this enterprise-wide approach to how to engage the military community, and hire veterans and hire military spouses, and engage with small veteran-owned businesses and spouse-owned businesses. It was a literal reminder that what I remember most about 9/11 was the outpouring of humanity that all of my peers signed up to serve. The rush, they were so young, they signed up to serve without asking, what was going to happen, but with everything they had, and some of them, up to and including their lives. So how can we not do everything that we can for this group of people to get them what they need to do their jobs, to support their families, and then help them to reintegrate, where we know that they will continue to be the leaders that they were while they were in service. Selfishly, now in the private sector, I also want to hire them all. So if you're looking, but because the best ad and then the worst cautionary tale to whether the next generation is going to sign up and raise their hand and get themselves into what they don't know what, but it's a veteran, and it's whether they are better off for having served. It's if their families are better off for having served, if their communities are better off for having served, and that's why it matters to the entirety of the country. Luckily, there are more and more of these, because I think a lot more of the legislative side does have to happen at the state level. And so glad to be here and be part of the discussion. Thank you.
We thank Dr. Greentree for comments, and our next speaker is Sandra Foley, who is the Regional Coordinator for the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs.
For inviting us today to speak on housing. So housing really becomes in two elements of it, permanent housing. We have home ownership, and then we all have the private, non-profit sector base for providing permanent housing. As Dr. Sowers has mentioned today, the VBA has mortgage-backed loans and things for veterans who want to have to purchase housing, and I know in the state of New York you have your Homes for Veterans services to help with that. Today I'd like to focus on the housing opportunities for veterans and on the homeless veterans. The VA has two permanent housing programs that we run. One is the HUD-VASH program, which is a collaboration with HUD that provide a voucher assistance for veterans, and then the VA themselves provide the supportive case management to help the veterans stay in housing. It is a longer term and it focuses on the chronically homeless and the lower income veterans. It's been in existence for a while. The most recent one is the one in which I coordinate nationwide, is the supported service for veteran families. Just to give you a little bit of background on the research and from a study from the Center for Homeless Among Veterans, their most recent studies said that overall, veterans' incomes are generally higher than the general population, and overall, except for maybe the recession and some certain subpopulations, as you mentioned, Tony, they have a lower unemployment rate. However, in the homeless population, veterans are way overrepresented within the homeless population. And then for male veterans are twice as likely to be homeless than their counterparts in the general population. And for female veterans, they're almost 3 times as likely to be homeless as their counterparts in the general population. We also know that some of the indicators for combat and younger, female veterans tend to be younger, in their 18 to 26, and male veterans tend to be, right now in this study, around about 45. The study was actually piloted in 9 cities, of which one is New York. So there's no real link to exactly which veterans will become homeless. However, we do know about why reasons veterans do become homeless. So the supportive service for veteran families is a shorter term program, permanent housing, where the VA has awarded nonprofits, 501c3s in the different states to provide the services to veterans in a housing first model. They provide outreach and engagement services. They'll require linkages to employment, linkages to benefits, financial counseling, credit repair, legal issues, transportation. All those issues that when veterans find themselves homeless, these are the as we've indicated before, are the reasons why they are become the situation that they are. In New York, right now, we have 23 grantees with $25 million of our annual $300 million budget. So New York has a high concentration of our funding. I'm happy also to share with you that as of October 1st, there's an additional $15 million going into our priority communities, $12 million into New York over 3 years, New York 5 boroughs, and $3 million into Long Island to really look at homeless prevention and rapid rehousing of veterans. The unique thing for our program is that the grantees can actually provide the services to the family members. So it's not only the veteran that gets assessed for employment or benefits. The program is able then to directly serve the family members, which the veteran identifies. So whoever the veteran identifies as in their family, in the household, they are the people who will receive services from the grantees. The idea really is from a housing first. The other unique situation with our funding is that we have temporary financial assistance, short-term financial assistance that the grantees can do for rental assistance. So we really need to negotiate with landlords to take on veteran families that may have no income or low income, and that once we get them into the house first, then we're able then to wrap the services around them so that then they can get a job, then they can go to get their benefits, fix their credit repair if that was one of their barriers, because they could have never got a lease because they might have had bad credit. So it really is exciting because it is actually, the services are provided at a local level. It's your agencies, your local communities who are providing the services to the veterans in the state of New York. So for outreach and engagement, that's really, really important, because there may be reasons why veterans do not want to go and apply for the VA services themselves. You know, maybe with some peer-to-peer special training, you know, and they can actually come then, and then the veteran then will be able to link into the services. So so that's our supported services. The other thing unique about New York is that we also, because we have so many grantees in our region, and there's a lot of collaboration with the continuum care, the homeless continuum care. We also have collaboration with the University of Syracuse IBMF crew who are working together as partners with our grantees to really ensure that we have a standard service for all veterans, so that any veteran that comes through any one of the agencies will have access to the same services as if they would no matter where they come in the same door. So I just want to thank you for letting me speak to that today.
I'd like to thank Sandra and all the speakers so far. It really has helped us to frame the discussion. We're going to go into a next stage right now where we're going to open up discussion among people at the table. And what we're looking for are the discussions on ideas. How can the state better serve our active duty members, our veterans, and their families? And we look for ideas that can be turned into action items and deliverables by the state, hopefully as soon as later on today. This is what the governor wants. So I'll probably take the privilege up here of calling on people. I think I'd like to start, if I could, circle back with Gerald Murphy for some comments, and I'll just point out some folks at the table, calling them, and then we'll open it up. Gerald?
Okay. So we've talked through the three groups that we're really looking at, both the active, the military family, and the veteran themselves. And what I'd like to do is just introduce for the discussion is something that really relates to more of our active members currently serving, and primarily those that serve on active duty or full-time military members. And that has to do with child education, and where we have the opportunity to move from installation to installation over time. An individual may be reassigned during their child's early education period 3 to 4 times potentially. Now some of those movements have slowed down over a period of time, but that still exists out there where a military member moves. Now it doesn't affect the National Guard to any great degree, but because we have a large active duty population in New York, there is an opportunity to participate in the Interstate Compact education opportunity for military children. These military children face challenges both in enrollment, eligibility, placement, course credit, sports team participation, on-time graduation to make sure that they've got the right courses to meet the criteria of the state they're in. And we want to support that across the board. There's probably about 13,000 by count children that would fall into this category of where they're moving from year to year, and approximately of that 13,000, 8,500 of them are the school-age children from 5 to 18 that would fit into this. Again, we have Fort Drum, West Point, Fort Hamilton, with a smaller population, but all yet still important to us. And so what we'd like to do is continue to advocate for that assimilation of those students that move from state to state where there may be different requirements, but the recognition of those requirements, a standardization of passing credit and looking at on-time graduations. The last thing I'll say is there are some parents that don't move their children with them at times because they don't want to move to a school system that doesn't accept their child. And so we create a separation in some cases by doing this as well. So we have this opportunity again to introduce, it would have to come through legislation. Many of the states are already signed on to this compact, and we'd like to see New York take a look at that as well, and the governor is committed to taking a look.
Can I piggyback on that?
Sure.
Just want to piggyback on what you just said, the military compact bill that you're talking about. I'm the sponsor of it in the state assembly, and we've been working on that bill for a number of years now with different school board associations here in the state of New York. We think we've come to the point where we've got an agreement and we could modify my bill and that everybody would be in sync. And so we hope to get that passed by some time before the end of session.
Michael, thank you very much. We have leaders of higher education here. We've heard from the Chancellor of CUNY, and I'm proud to call on, it's the first chance I get a chance to call on another chancellor, a woman who has really helped transform the SUNY system since she came, a great leader. Please welcome Chancellor Nancy Zimpher. Chancellor.
Yeah, well, thank you. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor Duffy, and thank you for seating me next to Bill Kelly, because we've gotten a lot done today, and the state is going to benefit from that. In reference to the previous conversation, in higher education, we call that seamless transfer, and it is hard work, and reciprocity across the states is hard, but I think very, very vital, so I commend you for that recommendation. For those who are visiting us, the State University of New York is pretty big. We have about 64 campuses, exactly 64 campuses, and we say within at least 30 miles of every New Yorker. So I think what we can do for veterans and their military families is immense, and like CUNY, the kinds of services we offer centrally and on our campuses. Fort Drum knows about Jefferson Community College, and you may know about Onondaga's service to veterans. Empire State actually trains veteran service officers so that we know the services that we need to deliver for veterans. But in thinking specifically about a recommendation, I think we're going to do our part through online education to make education accessible to veterans and their families by literally taking the education to them. And then, of course, we continue to welcome veterans and their families to our campuses. But in the last 2 days, the SUNY Board of Trustees met, and we had an opportunity to hear from two of our community college campuses. We have about 12,000 veterans studying at SUNY, and about 8,000 of them are at our community colleges. So I said, as luck would have it, Governor Cuomo is convening the summit on Thursday, so what would you most like for us to say to the legislative leaders and to the governor? And while we've heard about an array of services that are really important, number one is financial aid. Because this is a population moving in and out of the state where residency is uneven. And for those of you who may not know, our tuition policies are statutory, so we need legislative and executive support. So the thought is that we could have legislation introduced that would waive residency for veterans and their families, whether they came from New York and are coming back or are not in New York right now. But imagine if this were true for veterans and their families across the country. There are awards for campuses that are veteran-friendly. If there were an award for states that are veteran-friendly with this kind of legislation and statutory permission, we would be the veteran-friendly, family-friendly state for higher education in the country. So let's think about it.
Great. Thanks, Chancellor. I'd like to call on somebody who is a leader in both the issue of power and economic development in the state. He's the CEO of the New York Power Authority, Gil Quinones. Gil.
Good morning. I'm here not only as the president and CEO of the New York Power Authority, but as I mentioned earlier, I'm here on behalf of the electric and gas utilities in New York State and also the private owners of power plants in New York State. All of us in that grouping employ about over 30,000 people, 30,000 New Yorkers, of which 4% are currently veterans. Now here's the opportunity. 40% of that 30,000 are retirement eligible over the next 5 years. So basically 12,000 out of 30+ thousand are eligible to retire over the next 5 years. The utilities, as you know, have very much similar requirements in terms of competencies with veterans. We are a 24/7 operation. We deal with large equipment that can be dangerous if not properly managed. We are mission-oriented, and we have to be structured to make sure that we deliver safe, reliable energy that is environmentally responsible as well. And together with Governor Cuomo's energy agenda, which is to help revitalize our energy infrastructure. We have an aging infrastructure. We need to bring more economical power from upstate to downstate and make our system more efficient. The governor has a very aggressive agenda in promoting energy efficiency, clean energy, including renewable energy in our state, and deal with climate change. After the storms that we have had over the past few years, we have a need to buttress our infrastructure, make them more resilient. And these are, to me, clear opportunities and a fit with the veterans community. And those are the things that I would like to explore today with all of you. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Bill. Before I call the next speaker, I'd like to make just one point and kind of a semi-announcement. Governor Cuomo created regional councils around the state for economic development. There are 10. Each region is subdivided from the 5 boroughs of New York City, the 2 major counties of Long Island, through upstate. Each of these councils is chaired by a leader of higher education, a college or a university president, and a CEO. They are populated by local government leaders, business leaders, not-for-profit leaders, and what their job is to try and bring these decisions for development and jobs and projects from a ground-up approach to Albany and not have a top-down approach. The governor, it was his idea based on his experience when he was Secretary of HUD. They have been incredibly successful so far. But I want to take it to a different level because I want to give 2 people credit. Both Governor Cuomo and Colonel Eric Hess, who is our leader of our veterans, have come up with an idea to incorporate a veterans component in each one of these regional councils. And at these councils, that's where decisions get made on jobs and on projects. It opens up relationships. It focuses priorities at a regional level. So the goal this coming year, thanks to Governor and Colonel Hesse, this is going to be part of each one of the regional councils, and I think you'll see the state, the infrastructure of the state in terms of economic development go on to a whole different level for veterans. So I want to thank the Colonel and the Governor for that. Calling our next speaker, we have a commissioner who really is in charge of all the infrastructure in the state, all the buildings and infrastructure, and you might not know who she is, but things would not happen in the state without her. She's done a phenomenal job. That's Roanne DeStito. So, Commissioner, if you have some comments, please.
I'm privileged to join everyone here at the round table. I'd like to take a few minutes to expand about the great announcement that was made by the governor and the legislative leaders about the Service Disabled Veteran-Owned Business Act. And this really has the potential to make a measurable difference to those who have served our country so heroically. This bill supports increasing the participation in procurement by service-disabled, veteran-owned small businesses with a significant business presence in New York State. My agency, the Office of General Services, will oversee the implementation of this act, but it will be guided by the statute that they so signed today. And that is, in the case of a United States Army, Navy, Air Force, Marine, Coast Guard, Army National Guard, or Air National Guard and Reserve, a veteran who receives a compensation rating of 10% or greater from the United States Department of Veterans Affairs or from the United States Department of Defense because of a service-connected disability incurred in the line of duty. And in the case of a New York Guard or the New York Naval Militia or the Reserves, a veteran who certifies pursuant to the rules and regulations promulgated by the Director to having incurred an injury equivalent to a compensation rating, again, of 10% or greater from the United States Department of Veterans Affairs or from the United States Department of Defense because of a service-connected disability incurred in the line of duty. This act for these people will provide meaningful economic opportunities for service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses to become a better integrated part of the New York State marketplace. The state has significant purchasing power that can be harnessed for this program. The statewide set-aside goal for participation by service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses, as the governor announced, will be 6%. To achieve this objective, there can be a set-off of certain procurements by state executive agencies and public authorities, and I'm only going to talk about two of the larger ones, and that is the Metropolitan Transit Authority, and of course, Gil's here to talk about the Power Authority of New York State, and they are included among many, many more New York State authorities. But SUNY and CUNY will also be involved. OGS already oversees major procurement operations for state agencies for construction, design, engineering services, commodities, services, and technology. So we are well positioned to move forward with the implementation of this economic development program to assist and support returning service-disabled veterans doing business with the state. Of course, OGS will not do this alone. We will work closely with my colleague, Colonel Hesse, with the Division of Veterans Affairs, Empire State Development, the Division of Military and Naval Affairs, and all other state agencies to make sure this program is extremely successful. To get started, we will work quickly on two projects simultaneously. The first is establishing the rules and regulations regarding how the program will be accessed, and the second is development of a certification program and a list of qualified small businesses that the agencies and the authorities and the major higher education institutions in New York can actually purchase their services and products from. We'll get existing service-disabled veteran businesses involved early in the process so we can learn from them. So I will be calling on people to help us put this together. A primary objective is to remove barriers that currently impede participation by these businesses in state contracts and procurements. And as you heard, part of the governor's commitment and support for service-disabled, veteran-owned businesses, OGS will ensure that the rollout of the act is responsive to the needs of these businesses and fully included in the state public procurement. I want to thank you, Lieutenant Governor, for the opportunity to explain a little bit more in detail what was so wonderfully announced today by the governor. Thank you.
Going in line, I'd like to call on the leader of our Department of Labor and State, Commissioner Peter Rivera.
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor. It's a pleasure being here with so many distinguished individuals, people that I have worked with, and that I feel very comfortable around. We at the Department of Labor, when it comes to veterans, have a very simple approach. Our approach is to give veterans priority. What this means is basically that anybody who has served our country will be served by the next available staff member and will get first priority for jobs and training. We have 96 career centers across the state We are ready to serve veterans in advance in training. We have veteran specialists, and they truly understand the work that veterans have to go through in transitioning to civilian life. Colonel Hesse mentioned experience counts, and I'd like to explain a little bit about how experience counts works. But I also want to give credit to the individuals that are here that have helped us develop this experience counts. I'm speaking about Chancellor Zimfer and Chancellor Kelly, and the great work that they have done. Chancellor Zimfer in the TAC programs, Chancellor Kelly in the work that they have done at John Jay College. Many veterans, when they're transitioning and when they're coming back, are very much interested in criminal justice as a career. And we have developed a program through Experience Counts that takes the training that these returning veterans have and cuts down tremendously on the work and the class course that's required for security guard training. For example, it normally takes 24 hours of training to become a security guard. Through Experience Counts and directly at our career centers, we have reduced the training to 4 hours. When it comes to gun safety, we have reduced the numbers from 47 hours to 8 hours. And we're finding that this is having a tremendous amount of success. In fact, we've had recently 35 veterans go through this program. So I encourage veterans to come to our centers. In fact, last year, we had 45,000 veterans who are transitioning come through our career centers. Veterans, if you're interested in a job, please visit one of our career centers. If you don't have a resume, we will help you prepare a resume. If you do have a resume, we will input it into our computers and see how we can help you find one of the 83,000 jobs that Governor Cuomo has been able to highlight through our Jobs Express website. We work with businesses to make sure that they do hire our veterans. We're constantly looking for businesses that want to hire veterans, and we try to plan recruitment drives to ensure that these veterans find jobs. I want to thank you again, Lieutenant Governor, for having us here, and I think that this is the way to really move a tremendous agenda.
The hiring process in the state is governed by the Civil Service Commission, and we have our leader of our Civil Service Commission, Commissioner Jerry Boone. Commissioner?
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. I want to first note that I'm happy to be here, and on a personal note, I have close-up experience working with a disabled vet who is my oldest brother, who is a disabled Vietnam vet. So I have been his advocate over the years to get him to a point where there's awareness and a willingness really to access the services that are available and to also engage peer support. So I do have that perspective, and I'm delighted that we have this summit today. I want to talk about a program that we have at Civil Service. As you know or may know, the state constitution requires that we test for jobs as much as practical. So we have a competitive service class that constitute about 80% of state jobs. So we have this program where I think we can do a better job at connecting disabled veterans with state jobs. It's referred to as 55C program, and that just refers to a section of the Civil Service Law that created the program over 35 years ago. It provides for up to 500 positions to be created or actually move from the competitive service into availability for disabled veterans or veterans with disabilities. Currently, we only utilize about 100, a little over 100 of those positions, so there's a lot of utilization that's available if we can, as we do improve outreach. And basically the way it works is that, again, any disabled wartime veteran or qualified veterans with a disability can apply for entry-level jobs in the state. And an entry-level job is just a job for which we provide an exam to the public, as opposed to a promotional exam where you have incumbents. So we can take up to 500 jobs and not have the exam apply, but otherwise take the qualifications and experience of veterans and place them in those jobs. So there's an opportunity there to do that on a greater scale, and application is made through the normal process when a job is available, through the Job Express, the Civil Service website, or any agency that has an entry-level job. I'm going to give you some examples of what I mean by entry-level jobs. We're talking about jobs such as professional jobs, could be an accountant, could be a lawyer. We're talking about administrative jobs. We're talking about assistants, service reps, security. So again, any job that we would ordinarily test for open to the public. So those are opportunities, and I think the key here is outreach. This program is, even though it's been around for a while, it's not as well known as it should be. Certainly outside of the Albany and New York City regions, we found that there is not as much awareness. So we have an opportunity to do a better job connecting agencies and job seekers while obviously upholding the requirements of the civil service system. So this is an existing program, and we want to explore ways that we can make it people or disabled vets or vets with disabilities more aware of the opportunity, and mechanisms to make the agencies, state agencies and authorities more aware of available talent in the veteran community who could fill these jobs. So that's something we're hoping to explore. Thank you.
By a person who's a strong supporter of active military and of veterans in New York State, Senator Benny Little. I want to thank Senator for coming very much and for joining us today. And our next speaker is the distinguished commander, our state commander of our VFW, Mike Basco. Mike.
First off, on behalf of the over 60,000 plus members, the Veterans of Foreign Wars here in the Department of New York, we're just a small spoke in a wheel of worldwide Veterans of Foreign Wars, which constitute 1.9 million members and our auxiliaries. Not to beat up one subject, but this Joseph Dwyer peer-to-peer program, I believe is so vital that we need to expand it to every county here in our state. Just to look at the numbers from 2012, when we have, I believe the number was 288 combat-related deaths, yet we had 348 suicides in the military. There's something wrong with this system. There is something wrong that is unbalanced. I know we went over this before, but please, if we can, help support this Joseph Dwyer peer-to-peer program. We just need to expand it. I believe that veterans returning today, I look at the veteran returning today as my child, pretty much. I know that back when I served in Vietnam and returned, I probably took 10 years off my mom's life. But being thankful to have gotten home, I believe that we need to give our children a little bit more respect, and we always want to do better for our own kids. And I believe that this Joseph Dwyer peer-to-peer program is one way that we can accomplish that. Next, I'm just going to ask a question. How do we stand on Senate Bill 6762 and Assembly Bill 08917? They are the Veterans Long-Term Care Act. I sit on a board, advisory board at the Long Island State Veterans Home on Long Island. very proud to be there for a little over 10 years. I see how our state-run nursing care facilities operate. They're fantastic. We have over, I believe, 1,200 beds available to us with the 5 nursing homes that we have. And the way I'm reading everything, we need to protect our veterans who want to go to one of the 5 state veterans homes throughout a state for long-term care. And the best way, I believe, to protect them is by not having them have to go through I believe it's a Medicare agency. To me, that just sounds like someone else has their hand in the veteran's pocket. So to avoid that, I believe that the 5 state-run nursing care facilities here in the state of New York should be exempt from this agency. And I think that we can progress a little bit better with having our long-term veterans taken care of. With that, again, thank you to the administration, the State Assembly, and the State Senate for all you do for our veterans. Thank you, sir.
To go back to your question, I would defer to either the members of the Senate Assembly or Colonel Hess, if I could speak on the legislation.
I can't speak directly to the legislation without going back and taking a good look at it, but what I will say is, part of the lunch program, we have Fred Scangu, who's here from the Stony Brook Veterans Home out on Long Island, and he's going to be providing a presentation at lunchtime to talk state veterans homes. As you said, sir, it is a great program. Our 5 veterans homes in the state do a great job, but I would tell you that that we can continue this conversation further at the break, and Fred will fill us all in over lunchtime on the program. So,
thanks, Colonel, very much. Thank you. The topic of mental health has come up several times today, and we have one of our state leaders here who has really done a phenomenal job since she came to the administration. It's our Deputy Secretary, Courtney Burke. Courtney.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. There have been several statistics, as you all noted today, that have been presented about the mental health needs of returning veterans. One of those, I think, was on the video that we all watched that talked about the number of veterans returning with PTSD. I know Dr. Sowers also talked about the number of veterans who are taking their lives each day. Very alarming statistics. I think what was most alarming about what Dr. Sowers noted is the number of veterans who take their lives who didn't actually seek help before that happened. We have a program at the Office of Mental Health known as SAFE Talk, and it's an acronym. The TALK part of it stands for Tell, Ask, Listen, and Keep Safe. What we'd like to do today, and I think it's wonderful that we have this opportunity through the summit, is to talk about how we expand that program. For those of you who aren't familiar with the program, hopefully today you will learn more about it. But it's a free training. It's 3 hours, and it allows just about anybody to become capable and learned in order to help our veterans when they do return and have mental health needs. So what we'd like to do is talk about how we expand this training this afternoon. We'd like to talk about how we get it to every corner of the state, how we partner with our county officials. John Javis mentioned earlier today the importance of these services at the local level. And so we look forward to talking about how we do, in fact, get this to every corner of the state and to every returning veteran. Thank you, Lieutenant Governor.
She introduced herself during the roundtable earlier, but Sue Malley is here from the U.S. Department of Veterans Affairs. I'd like to call on Sue for some comments.
At the regional office in New York, we handle primarily disability compensation claims and vocational rehabilitation and employment services for disabled veterans. And as you know, one of the most pressing issues facing the Veterans Benefits Administration today is the backlog of disability claims. Secretary Shinseki has defined the backlog as any claim pending longer than 125 days. 125 days because that's the reasonable amount of time it takes for us to establish a claim in our system, obtain evidence often from the service departments, service treatment records, sometimes personnel records, go to the Veterans Health Administration for a VA examination, review that evidence, make a decision. implement that decision, and notify the veteran. And right now, VBA has over 635,000 rating claims pending. 358,000 of those are in the backlog, or about 56%. My office, which represents the 31 counties in eastern New York, there are currently about 9,700 disability claims pending, with about 5,500 of those in the backlog, also about 56%. And at the Buffalo VA Regional Office, which handles the western portion of the state, there are currently about 8,000 claims pending, with 5,100 in the backlog, for about 64%. So Secretary Shinseki transformation plan for VA is all about implementing multiple people, process, and technology solutions to eliminate that backlog. Speaking for my office, which is pretty representative of what's happening in VA, we have reduced the inventory of rating claims pending by over 9,000 since April of 2012, and the backlog by about 23%. But in order to achieve the Secretary's goal of no claim pending longer than 125 days by the end of 2015, we need to reduce our inventory by at least another 4,500 claims. We have a really good working relationship with the New York State Division of Veterans Affairs, and in fact, New York State leads the way in submitting fully developed claims from veterans to the regional office, and this is a significant transformation effort that our partners, like New York State, participate in. And along those lines, we have been in some very preliminary discussions about the possibility of implementing a strike force modeled after an initiative that was implemented in both Texas and California, where the state assisted both in submitting fully developed claims, which is something that New York State already leads the way in, but also in helping to gather evidence for veterans needed to make a claim ready for decision. And that's for claims that are already pending and possibly even in our backlog. For those who don't know much about the VA claims process, the evidence gathering cycle is the lengthiest portion of that process. So if that's something that we can pursue with the state, it could play a key role in reducing the number of disability claims in our backlog, and we can ultimately provide the timely and accurate services that our veterans deserve. Thank you.
We're lucky to have a lot of very strong veteran leaders today. I'm going to call on Vince McGowan, who's the president of the United War Veterans Council. Vince?
Thank you very much, Lieutenant Governor, for the opportunity to speak to the summit about our concerns of the number of veterans that are going to be discharged as we reduce our military, and through sequestration. The Cranes has reported that we could expect 44,000 veterans to be coming back to New York this year, 2014, and we don't believe that we're ready for them. The evidence is the backlog that we're currently talking about. And we're hoping that this summit will bring about a partnership of the government and the not-for-profits and the business sector to try to move along the problem that we've all identified, and that we all are here to focus on finding a cooperative solution. Thank you for the opportunity.
Housing has come up, and housing is a very important issue for returning veterans. We have George Liacato is here, who was a leader in the Housing Community Renewal State Agency. He's a senior vice president of single-family housing, and I believe also a mortgage leader. So I'd like to hear from George, if we could.
Thank you, Lieutenant Governor. And thank you for the opportunity of allowing me to come here today to speak about a really terrific program that the State of New York Mortgage Agency offers to military personnel and their families. The name of the program is called Homes for Veterans. The program was originally conceived in 2007 after Congress authorized state housing agencies, state housing finance agencies such as Sonny Mae, the ability to waive the first-time homebuyer requirement for honorably discharged military veterans. Sonny Mae makes our money available through the issuance of tax-exempt bonds, so our loans have to comply with federal guidelines. And one of the guidelines that we typically have to impose on our programs is that borrowers have to be first-time home buyers. But this change that was authorized by the Congress allowed us to waive the first-time home buyer requirement, again, for honorably discharged military veterans. Under the governor's leadership in 2011, the program was expanded to include active military, National Guard, and reservists. And more recently, we expanded the program again to include honorably discharged National Guard and reservists who are not necessarily military veterans. The program offers 97% financing at extremely competitive interest rates. In fact, it's the best program that Sunny Mae offers. We offer down payment assistance up to $15,000. Eligible properties are 1 to 4 family homes, including condos, co-ops. They can be both new construction and existing. We even offer a purchase renovation option so that if somebody wanted to buy, an eligible person or military person wanted to purchase a home that was needed some repair, we could provide financing not only to purchase the home but also to do the renovation. We do have income and purchase price limits on the program. The income limits are generally 100% of area median income, and they're higher for larger family sizes. And because state housing finance agencies have an excellent reputation for promoting sustainable home ownership, Sunny Mae is exempt from many of the federal rules implemented in January, which gives us added flexibility in making loan decisions. Our loans are available through a network of 60 participating lenders across the state, and we have a staff that's readily available. We have 3 business development officers that can travel anywhere in the state to provide homebuyer workshops at military bases or any events that might be sponsored by veterans groups to talk more about our programs. Perhaps we can think about some ways to make this program more visible to military veterans, their families, and active duty personnel, and the other reservists and National Guard that might be eligible for the program. We'd like to see more production come out of this program. We think it's an absolutely terrific program, and if anybody has any recommendations on how we can make the program more visible, I'd be willing to hear them. Thank you.
I've called on a number of people. Anybody at the table that I've missed would like to jump in and offer some comments? Seeing nobody. Well, that concludes the first part of our effort this morning. We're going to break now for lunch. Before I do that, at the risk of alienating anybody in the audience, I want to just point out a point of personal privilege. Someone in the audience is a person I know very well. He's been a super successful police chief up in the Rochester area who's retiring. His name is Todd Baxter. He is chief of the Greece Police Department, who's leaving a great career and now has just been named the leader of the Rochester Veterans Outreach Center. So over 20 years in the U.S. Army. So I want to, if Todd's out there, I want to congratulate him publicly and thank him. There he is back. Got to give the hometown a shout out when I can. Anyway, we are going to break for lunch. We're going to come back this afternoon. We're going to reconvene at 1:15 for the afternoon session and put some of the ideas back into hopefully some deliverables. Lunch is being served downstairs in meeting room 6. So please enjoy a great lunch, and we'll see you back here at 1:15. Thank you.
Successful.